Well, I wasn't born on the farm, but some people think I got habits like I was. Underneath that tree. Born in the barn, man? Where are you coming from? Yeah, I'm Carroll Hoksbergen. I born in 1955. I was right in the middle of a family of 5 siblings, so I am the 3rd generation farmer here on this farm. My dad was farming. He was a diverse farmer like his dad was, raising corn, soybeans, and hogs and cattle, and you know, it was kind of the way of life then. And then things were tight and money was tight. We didn't have a very good house here on the farm. It's still sitting here. Last time it was painted was the year I was born. I'm still here, man. I don't know. I think the house might outlast me if I don't get going here and start tearing that thing down. My dad was working with NFO, National Farmers Organization, and is recruiting members for them, so he would have to go out on the road. And when he would go out on the road, he'd first drop me off at the farm. And around 13, 14, I was still here on the farm, or that old when he was dropping me off. And he would drop me off here on the farm, and I would take care of the farming chores, taking care of the crops. So I was exposed to farming, you know, way back in the day, and thanks to my dad, he had trust in me that I could do it, and he knew I was an equipment operator and could get it done for him. So he would show me how to do it and have at it, and I'd be glad to do it. So when I was just, you know, 12, 13, 14 in there, you know, we had just had a hard rain, and so we cultivated earlier in the year and made a channel for water to run down. But then get down to the waterway, and this grass waterway, but in that grass waterway was all this slip dirt. And I was just going down the hill and gonna go through that waterway and come out the other side and cultivate. I get down there, I got tractor buried in this slip mud. And I knew something was wrong right there. If, you know, farming like that would subject us to so much erosion. And I really didn't have the big concept of what erosion was yet. So when I started farming the farm, I was renting from Dad, I you know, wanted to not ever see that again. My dad was still owner of the land, so I was leasing it from him, owning my own equipment and farming it. We're talking here, you know, 79 and 1980 there. I was just playing around because I just got the equipment bought from my brother, and I had to take an extra loan from the bank for that. And I didn't really want to go out and borrow any more equipment to expand, but I seen the erosion on this farm, and if I could start practicing some no-till and still use the regular planter, that John Deere 7000 planter, maybe put some no-till coulters on it, and so not spend too much investment and still plant this farm, and without the tillage work where you would need more operators and more machinery to do that. And then I was hoping and dreaming to expand my farming operation to produce more for less. Started playing around with corn into soybean stubble. It's probably the easiest thing to do nowadays. But back then it was still very controversial, you know, operation with what the current practices of farming going on back then were. And people were asking, I was thinking, you know, what about no-till soybeans in the corn stalks? Harder to do because, you know, there wasn't glyphosate soybeans, you know, it was harder to control the weeds and so. So I took this 7000 planter, you know, and I thought, well, we can't put beans on 30-inch rows because we wouldn't have the canopy. And that was one of the selling points of the no-till drills. You plant narrow row 7.5-inch space soybeans, you would get the canopy quicker, and that'd be your weed control later on. So I took this 7000 planter and I would plant across the field, laid in 6 rows, and then I would dead end, come back, and then I would just go over 15 inches and plant between the rows again. So yeah, I was planting beans on 15-inch rows, but it took a long time. It's like planting with a 3-row planter. It took a long time to plant. Oh, it was looked down, you know. I farm ugly, dirty. People said I would never have anybody operate my farm like that, you know, because there's nothing prettier to them, you know. Man, black dirt, and green rows of corn coming up in it. You know, and it was hard for me to go out and rent ground, but then there was other people who saw the benefits and the values of that, and you know, I was always attached to the soil where I didn't really want to leave have it leave the farm. So that was my big motivation. So to save the soil, and you know, the other things like, you know, saving fuel and saving equipment costs was second, but conservation was my #1 thing. So I'd be sitting outside the old house out here in the evenings, you know, and I would notice a pheasant would jump up out of my cornfield just south of this old house over here and cackle, get up, he would move up and fly across my ditch, fly across the highway, and then he would land in that prairie out there that the county had thrown out back in 1968 already. And I said, why in the world is this bird leaving my farm when, you know, how can I keep this thing around here? Old timer is telling the story, you know, my birds are leaving or landing in the ditch across from mine. And I says, I can't figure out what's going on. Well, this old Doc Fitzpatrick was the name. He was a veterinarian. He says, you know what? You got prairie growing on the other side of your road there. The county had seeded out there, and those birds are going in there overnight. I want pheasants, so I wanted a habitat for them. So that's what got my concept going around the prairie, wanting prairie, not knowing the whole history behind the prairie at the time. And so we worked the ground up, planted it probably late June or so, made all the mistakes in the world wrong, that we planted it too deep and had the ground too loose. And yeah, he compacted in, but we couldn't get a very good stand. We had mostly, you know, hardly any prairie show up for years. So after 3-4 years, old Doc says, well, I says, I don't know, Doc, well, I don't have much prairie out here growing. I got a few plants here and there, I don't know what to do. He said, you got to burn it off. So me and my friend Roscoe went out there that following spring and lit a match to it. And one little area that was overcome with native cedar trees that I hadn't seeded prairie to it and didn't get killed off, but the fire got into that and just toasted them things. It was, you know, the cedar trees are probably 30 foot tall, and we had 30-foot flames coming off of them. It was quite the sight to see. I can still see it yet today. And I really didn't want to burn them trees down. Lo and behold, that very following fall, I started having native prairie, big blue stem showing up, and a few Indian grass plants, a lot of little blue. And that got me excited, you know. I had prairie there underneath them cedar trees and not knowing it. So where in the world does this seed come from? Common sense made, and visiting with Doc Fitzpatrick, he says, well, that big blue stem had always been there, and it was in check because of the cow pasture grasses and being underneath the shade of them cedar trees. But if you take away all the competition, you took away the cedar trees, you took away the cool season grasses. The cool season grasses kind of went away on its own because they're shallow rooted and couldn't stay alive underneath them cedar trees. So he says, those things came back from the roots that were there. That's original prairie plants. So that got me very excited, and then so I got that registered with the state of Iowa. So now I had to work with Iowa Crop Improvement Association to certify that that seed that I was growing there was Iowa source seed, or Iowa equal-type seed, or Jasper County equal-type seed. So I would collect this Indian grass from this remnant, plant it over here. I had enough to plant a 1/4 acre. So I got that going, and then next year, year 2, I would collect some more and plant it over here. But still, I ain't got the first plot producing seed yet, because it takes about 3-4 years down the road before you do that. Eventually, when I start harvesting those fields I started from that remnant, I would have certification for yellow tag on that, or source identified seed, that, all right, I got enough to plant 10 acres over here. That it'd be like the 2nd generation out from that remnant. So now that ground is, that 10 acres is eligible for all Iowa source. I still needed to make farm payments, pay the rent. It was hard to take out 40 acres of land and put it to prairie and then wait 3 years. So you had to slowly build this thing. You couldn't really take the whole farm and seed it down because, you know, I wasn't getting any subsidies to go this route. You know, you're on your own, buddy, on this deal. And this, you know, I started selling seed before I was Hoksey Native Seeds. You know, I didn't become Hoksey Native Seeds till, you know, early 2000, 2003 or 4 in there. So I was selling seed, you know, just as a regular grower, but I wasn't really selling, you know, large amounts yet. And once I got in it, it seemed like, you know, the price dropped. You know? Price supports for my product. There is no price support. There's no subsidies for what we do, and there's nothing, you know, to help you get through those transition yields of planting it to maybe year 3, 4 down the road where you can maybe finally get a return on your investment. You know, hard thing to learn was the timing of things, how important it is to hit those seeds just before they're ripe. Mother Nature calls for those seeds, you know, as they get mature and ripe and they fall off. So you got to be a little bit ahead of Mother Nature on harvesting, because I've lost crops of, you know, Indian grass, for example, due to a high wind situation, maybe a week before you're ready to harvest it. And a dry wind in the fall, and next thing you know, that crop is ripe, and next thing you know, it's blowing off. It's hard to insure this thing like you would corn and soybeans on a harvest. You know, those plants are not bred to hang on to their seeds. They're meant to drop as soon as they get ripe. You can probably get some kind of insurance for your specialty crops, but you need to have a history of your yield production. So there's so much red tape to get it. And then when you grow a specialty crop that's got yellow tag value is being grown right here in Iowa, for example, switchgrass, and then if you have a claim, they don't want to pay the extra value of your yellow tag. They'll pay you a little bit of the value of the cheapest switchgrass that's out there that might be grown in North Dakota or South Dakota. It's not right. It should be for what the value is of the product that you've sold in the past. My crop insurance is being on time and scout your fields, just knowing, you know your crop. You know, probably the only new thing I ever bought in here was the debearder that takes off. So that's the only piece of equipment. Couldn't find one used, and I'm kind of a used type of guy. I go out and shop around and try to find something. There was a lot of seed corn companies, seed bean companies, and then Roundup Ready come out with beans and then there was a crisis in the seed business where all these companies start emerging, and these small seed companies had this equipment, and that started coming available. It opened up a lot of things, and a lot of this stuff I bought, you know, who would want to get into the grass seed business, you know? They didn't care about that. They were corn beaning yet, and so it opened up a lot of this stuff, and I would take them, I would, you know, shrink them, downsize them, fit them, make them to work here, and, you know, and just try to figure out what the space you got, what would work. And that's true right down to the combines I operate today to harvest this stuff. You know, you have to modify. Like I said, you know, it's some of these machines, when you find them, you buy them, because they're hard to find. They've sat outside maybe too long, and so I would just see them on farm auctions. I would, you know, just land up buying them. I mean, you could buy them, you know, $200-300. Yeah, scrap price, that's what I was competing against to buy that stuff. Scrapper. When I started raising prairie, I didn't think about a legacy. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do and seen the importance of it, but as to go down as you know, a guy who promoted prairie, yeah, that's important, but that wasn't the main reason I did it. I was doing it so other people can experience the values of a pollinator on the prairies and those beauties you see, you know, throughout the growing season, and seeing the benefits it has to our water quality and our pollinators and just everything that goes along with it. And yeah, the legacy thing is great. I think it's just kind of like, you know, frosting on the cake, you know, from your hard work that you put into it. And you know, the first drive you need to have in conservation is got to be in your heart. You got to believe in what you're doing. And it's something amazing about being a conservationist, you know, once you start seeing the big picture, it kind of, you know, starts popping up and exploding in your head that, you know, of what you're doing is actually accomplishing something. And if we get more people to do it, we can accomplish things a little quicker together, and we all can be benefits of our efforts in you know, restoring habitat and our groundwater protection and just seeing the whole picture out there. My belief and spiritual belief in God has played a big part in it. It takes a lot of prayer to keep this thing going. Looking at the big picture, not just what I'm doing here, not just for Carroll Hoksbergen, is for what I'm doing for the environment that he put me in. And he put me on this farm to be observant, you know, and pass your experiences on to other people. And so that's very important to me. So it has, spiritual, it has a very big effect on what I do. So yeah, you know, I guess I'm at peace with my maker too, that, you know, I'm trying to protect this, you know, this earth that he put us on. There, again, being a good steward of the land. I just have a gut feeling I'm doing the right thing, and, you know, that kind of keeps me going day after day. You know, some of the rewards might not be till the next life.